Crypto market rundown, where we talk about everything that's going on in the great world of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. From the fundamentals in the news to the technicals on the charts, we spend the time doing hours of research so that you all don't have to. And here we are again with another crazy week in the crypto markets. Every single week we come back, we kick off the episode, and we're like, man, things are volatile. What a volatile start to 2025 we've had so far. And we're continuing that theme. We're seeing quite a bit of volatility. This time, it's mainly on the altcoin side, and that's primarily how it's been since the start of this year. But altcoins have been extremely volatile. We've seen some upside, but really a lot of downside since the year has started. And we've been talking about some of the catalysts that have kind of been creating that environment and kind of been creating those circumstances. And today we're going to talk a little bit deeper about this. So we want to talk about what's happening in the altcoin market. We want to take a look at the charts first. We're going to be talking about a few of these catalysts that are actually pushing the markets downwards, as well as a bunch of positive catalysts that, of course, can help show price back to the upside. So if that interests you, make sure you stick around for the entire length of today's episode. I mean, seriously, we have 32 new states, or 32 states in total, that are looking at adopting some form of crypto standard. We have Standard Chartered, which is saying, hey, we think Bitcoin can hit $500,000 in the next 3 years. They're talking about more sovereign wealth funds looking at Bitcoin outside the United States. And there's really just a lot of really positive things that are happening that we think that everyone needs to be made aware of. So before we do all that, Tivo, how are things on your end? I know you've been here, there, and everywhere since we last chatted. But man, I mean, seriously, you were on, halfway across the world. You're in the Pacific. You were skiing the mountains. How are things looking?
Yeah. No, it's been a fun 2 weeks. We didn't miss an episode, so credit to us. But yeah, from Hawaii to the mountains of Park City in Utah, back to Tampa, Florida here. But shout out to we had some we had some friends along the way that were interested in listening to the podcast. So shout out to the Aloha Ski Shop in Park City. And a couple other people I met in Park City along the way that said they were going to check out the pod. So if you're listening, thank you. But it feels like, yeah, we kind of have already broken down multiple times how the easy money with the Trump presidency is has probably come and gone, and now you got to kind of get put on your detective hat,
Yeah.
and see what part of the markets interest you the most, whether that's Bitcoin, whether that's altcoins. I know me and you were talking when we were making the sheet today, and we're going to cover that soon. Is the meme coin mania has again, maybe an opinion has taken a turn for I don't want to say the worst, but it's taken kind of a little bit of a negative turn over the last couple weeks. We're going to cover that, but there's plenty of opportunity. So there's plenty of opportunity. It's just again, what's your risk appetite? What are your goals? And how locked into the markets are you? Are you an every tick kind of guy, every day, every hour, or are you more of a set it or forget it, or somewhere in the middle? It's it's that time to do the research and educate yourself. And the people that listen to this show every week, I think now know that this is a great place to come to kind of get the pulse of the crypto markets. But we also have a lot of new listeners, so if the markets aren't doing exactly what you were hoping or thought, but you found this podcast, keep coming back, because I think this is part of the education and research process that can help you make good decisions that will help you down the road.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. And I think what better way to actually kick us off than by going straight to the charts and taking a look at what's happening with price action, because that seems to be where a lot of the attention is, right? Why are my assets depreciating? Are they going up? Are they going down? That's pretty much what people are concerned with first. So let's go ahead and just throw up the charts, take a look at what's happening over here with Bitcoin first. And we can work our way down through a lot of these altcoins, because I mean, really what we saw was yesterday was pretty nasty. We saw about a 5 to 10% drop across the board of altcoins, some a little bit less, some a little bit more. But we've seen about a 20 to 30% pullback yet again, kind of coming back down towards the lows of the average altcoin, especially around that mid cap area. So we'll get to those in just a second. But if we're looking at Bitcoin, Bitcoin is finally coming back down towards the low end of 90K. And this has been an area that we've been talking about for months. We've been saying, hey, 90K is this massive support for Bitcoin. We've tested this area nearly 10 times over the last 4 months, which means that over the course of November, December, January, and now February, we have tested this area so many times. And this has been the absolute bottom of support, really just the primary support ever since we came up above 90K. And you can see that Bitcoin has been ranging back and forth between 90K up to around 110K, back down to 90K, back up towards 110, back down towards 90. And now, hopefully, we're trying to find a bottom in here. And that's kind of what I want to talk about first and foremost. So if we look at Bitcoin, we've noticed here that since this real like absolute low was put in around 89K on January 13th, this was like kind of the pivot point. It immediately led to a new all-time high. It was a very slight all-time high, but we still pushed up to a new all-time high nonetheless. Well, then after kind of hitting this, we sold back off to the downside, but we hit a higher low of $2,000. So we went from a low of 89K to a higher low of 91K. Then we went back to the upside. Now we're coming back to the downside, and we're trying to put in a higher low here of $93,000. So that would mean that we ended up, $2,000 higher after the first swing high or after the first swing low, and then another $2,000 higher if we are going to find another local low in this area. And so what this would do is, if we start connecting these lines, you can see that I have a couple arrows on the chart, but I'm looking to see a consistent pattern here of support climbing higher and higher and higher, because what that could indicate is that the bears are actually getting weaker. This means that upon every sell-off of, every time the sellers are trying to take control of the market, they are not getting as far down as they were previously. And that ultimately is a good thing to see for any kind of buyers. They're going to look at this and say, hey, the bears are not as strong as they were the last time they sold off. And then this time around, they're not as strong as they were the last time that they sold off before that. And we're starting to see this pattern of higher lows. So I'm keeping a close eye on this, TiVo, saying, man, I want Bitcoin to not only hold above around 90, 91K. That's really the floor that I want to see Bitcoin go at the absolute lowest. But I would even prefer to say, hey, I actually want to see Bitcoin hold above 93, 94K. That would be the ideal zone, because that would pretty much imply that, hey, Bitcoin's forming higher lows and the bulls are retaking control of the market. The kind of short-term analysis here, before we go back to the big picture, is Bitcoin is in a bit of a squeeze. You can see that on the high end, right around 98K. This has been the ceiling for about 2 weeks on Bitcoin, whereas the low end is right here around 93 to 94K. So you can see that there's been this closely knit range right underneath the 100K that is only about $4,000 from top to bottom in terms of price action. So price has been kind of squeezing inside here. We know that we have this climbing level of support, a big level of support at 90K, but we also have a pretty decent sized level of resistance right below 100K here. And that's what's creating this kind of squeeze range that Bitcoin is in right now. And I don't see this holding for an extended period of time. Again, we've already been in this for almost 2 weeks, for the bulk of February so far. And I don't see us sitting around in between 94 and 98K for another 2 weeks after this. So I think things are going to start accelerating once we see Bitcoin moving outside of this range of 94 to 98K. Again, roughly speaking, right there on that range. And once we see a break to the upside, well, hey, I think Bitcoin shoots back through 100K, and I think that we see acceleration back towards that ultimate goal of the all-time high. Now, if we break down here and we start cascading down, we again have support right around 90, 91K. But if we crack that, that's where I think Bitcoin has some real room to the downside, probably pushing into the low 80s, high 70s. And that's not something that people necessarily want to see. Again, I do think it's probably the least favored outcome, just because we always like to zoom out and say, hey, the trend is your friend, and it has been for a couple years on Bitcoin. So when in doubt, zoom out, look at that trend, and just understand that the macro is still very much in our favor, and that we have a lot of things that are still looking favorable. And we're going to talk about some of those regulatory catalysts and maybe some of the frustrations that people have had and why we're seeing just a little bit of a dip here. The other thing is, I think that Bitcoin is in a unique spot. it has been holding value for 2 weeks. And if we go and we look at the average altcoin, let's just look at AVAX again, kind of trending down here over the last couple of weeks. Near, Stacks, IMX, all these other charts kind of coming back down to these multi-month, maybe even multi-year lows, depending on the cryptocurrency that you're looking at. Meanwhile, Bitcoin's pushing like weekly lows instead of like month or even year lows, and Bitcoin's holding value a lot better than altcoins. So, if we go and we just briefly look at what's happening over here with Ethereum, again, consolidating beneath the 200-day moving average. Solana beneath the 200-day moving average. There are a few players out here, and I want to give some shout outs. XRP, well above its 200-day moving average, right alongside Bitcoin. And then Sui also trying to find support at this 200-day moving average. Probably something to keep an eye on. Never giving financial advice, but I think these are ones that are technically overperforming in comparison to a lot of other alts. And then, of course, I brought this one up before. I have no exposure here, but Mantra, just new all-time high after new all-time high after new all-time high, TiVo, and it just doesn't stop. I was looking at this with one of our other analysts just yesterday, Rohit, and we were looking at it, and it's up like 40,000% in the last year and a half or something. I mean, it is just ridiculous. And so, if anyone follows this project closely, I loosely do. I know that they've landed like a $1 billion tokenization deal over with some countries, I think, in Europe and Asia, and they've been doing a lot of RWA work over there. But if you are a lot more plugged in with Mantra and you know what's going on, and you know why this thing's shooting up 40,000% to a $7.5 billion market cap, let us know. We want to get more plugged in. Maybe if you have a connection, we can bring him on the podcast and we can talk to him about what in the world is going on there. Because there's a lot of just, again, crazy stuff that's happening. But I think the big kind of, and maybe loser is an overstatement, an exaggeration here, but the big loser on the week, I would say, is Solana. Seeing a lot of FUD, a lot of drama. We're going to get into it. But Solana seeing a pretty stiff sell-off from around $205 all the way down to around $160. This marks a 22% drop in the price action of Solana, breaking through some crucial support levels through the 200-day moving average. And ultimately, I mean, this is the lowest point that we have seen Solana since pre-election days. So, the lowest point that we've seen since the very, very start of November 2024. And, with that, the whole Solana ecosystem is kind of falling down deeper here. We can look at Jupiter, again, falling down to the lowest point that we have seen it at since September of 2024. Radium falling down since the lowest point that we've seen since December of 2024. So not nearly as low. But we are seeing the whole Solana ecosystem get hit pretty hard here. Radium was one of the best performers in this market. Now it's down it did drop from top to bottom around 35% just in the last couple days. And now it's pushing down about 54% from its all-time high, whereas this was really leading the market for a long time and something that we were covering on. So again, lots of volatility when it comes over to the altcoin market. And, again, one of the big catalysts of why altcoins are getting hit here has to do with what's happening on Solana. And TiVo, you referenced this in the very beginning, but there's been all sorts of, dare I say, chaos kind of happening on Solana's blockchain. It feels like there's just like a lot of rug pulls going on there. And the latest one was devastating, but it was Libra.
Yeah, not not the funnest thing to talk about, but yeah, so the drama going on Solana, and we're going to give you a high overview here, and then my goal for the podcast network is to bring on Brian and Joe later this week and get a full breakdown from them, because when we talk about being in the trenches, nobody on our team is more in the trenches than those guys over at the Crypto Mavericks and Momentum Moneymakers. So we gotta hear from them. The high level overview is that this Libra meme coin was launched, and it was basically pitched as a national token for Argentina. And so that was kind of the branding behind it. And interestingly enough, the president of Argentina, Milei, retweeted Libra coins. So there was a tweet, announcing the launch, and then the president of Argentina retweeted it. So then you could go into the debate of, is a retweet an endorsement, this or that. I guess you could debate that. However, it's the president of a nation. So people are going to take that pretty seriously. So everybody piles in, and then it gets rugged out, and then the tweet disappears, and then funny enough, hours later, the tweet he reposted again. So it's like it's a double dip on the president of Argentina's Twitter account engaging with this Libra token. And you had people piling in, and obviously people selling and rugging, and just it was a classic meme coin pump and dump. And then there was some, and this is why I want to bring Brian and Joe on, because then it started this whole investigative reporting on the timeline. Led no other than Dave Portnoy brought on this guy Hayden. So this guy Hayden was kind of the person who was helping create and launch this token. And then he sounded pretty shady from the Dave Portnoy interview of not really having the answers needed to kind of clear his name, in my opinion. But the whole thing was pretty shady. And now Malay saying that he had no knowledge of what the project was. He thought it was just kind of a supporting something with Argentina. So yeah, a lot more questions than answers. And so if you boil it down to that, people are in the, it was launched on Solana. So you could say like, okay, the natural step is in this meme coin, game right now is people are selling their Solana or transferring their Solana into all these tokens, and then they're getting rugged. So then we're basically losing a lot of liquidity in Solana. So that could be, part of the downward trend of Solana right now. But, that's all I'll touch on. I want to leave a little, tidbit there. I'm going to try and get Brian and Joe on for maybe something tomorrow or Friday, get that out for the weekend so we could do a full breakdown of the meme coin market, because there seems to be a little chaos right now. And whether it's good chaos or bad chaos, I know I try to, bring our listeners some clarity around that. So I'm going to work on that. But I think that's a good level overview of the Libra situation that has caused some negative price action in Solana.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. There just is some chaos there. Unfortunately, it cost investors, hundreds of millions of dollars. But, and I think it has to get sorted out eventually. There needs to be some sort of repercussion for doing things like that. And, I think that there will be. It obviously will take time, but it is causing a little bit of FUD, right? That is the definition of FUD. It's just fear, uncertainty, doubt, these kind of crazy situations that unfortunately lead to events like this. Now, I still think that the fundamentals of Solana are great. And what I hate the most about this is that Solana feels so strong. Um, and all of those true projects that are built on top of it are getting negatively affected. So, you look at just Solana itself, you look at Radium, you look at Jupiter, you look at Jido, you look at, anything else that is building on Solana, just for being in the Solana ecosystem, those are now negatively getting affected. Those are now selling off. And I don't feel like that's fair. Again, should Solana be going up after an event like this? Probably not. I understand a little bit of sell off, but to the degree that we're selling it, it does seem a little bit blown out of proportion. I think the answer here is that if people are tired of rug pulls and they're tired of all this stuff, well, I think that we need to create maybe safeguards in place, or maybe just don't trade the meme coins that can do stuff like this, unless it's a fully doxed team and they're more reputable. Maybe that's what needs to happen, is that people can't do this anonymously, or I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but I think that the answer to this is not, hey, let's boycott the Solana ecosystem, because I think there's a ton of great stuff going there. I'm probably a little bit biased in saying that because I'm a Solana holder, but I think that the answer here is not let's boycott Solana and let's sell everything off. I think the answer here is let's hold the people accountable and let's not participate in the stuff that is likely to do this in the first place. A lot of people over the past year have been just all on board with meme coins, going from one to another, and there's tens of thousands that are being created every single day. But unfortunately, we've gone from the meme coins being this really fun, community-driven thing to now just being with a little bit more rug pull driven. And I hate to see that, and I think that it can change. But Tivo, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I thought this was interesting from friend of the program, Matt Hogan of Bitwise. He gave a keynote speech at a retail investing conference, and his three big takeaways, as you can see on the screen, are one third of the audience owned crypto, one third of the audience was considering allocating to crypto soon, and 0% heard of Libra. And interestingly enough, I read this and chuckled at first, especially with the comment below there of apparently Malay hasn't heard of Libra either, which is the president of Argentina. But it makes sense because like if I told my dad now and my mom are like interested in
Yeah.
Bitcoin, they're always like, oh, it's Bitcoin's dad. My dad will be like, ooh, I saw Bitcoin went down or I saw it went up. If I asked my dad, who's now tracking Bitcoin price per se, hey, did you hear Libra this weekend? He would be like, no. My brother didn't hear of Libra this weekend, and he's interested in the
Yeah.
space. And so I think it's for people like us that are in the space and tracking every move, and especially trying to bring the news each week, and especially if you're on X, in the crypto sphere on X, like you're gonna hear about this stuff. But I think that as much as people, there's an argument on two sides. It's like, okay, well, new people are being onboarded through meme coins and they're getting rugged and not coming back. I tend to lean maybe that's not true. Like, is the first thing if you're onboarded onto crypto, I'd be more surprised if the first thing you're downloading is Jupiter or Phantom Wallet, so you
Yeah.
can go buy Libra. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, but I
Well,
think it's kind of the crypto casino that it's greed, right? It's like people see like, okay, if I'm early and I get in early,
yeah.
maybe I can get that 2, 3, 4, 10x and then get out. And just like I was in Lake Tahoe this weekend and I went to play a little craps, and I like to play craps because I like to roll the dice because I feel like I'm doing something. I know I'm gambling. I know the odds aren't in my favor, but I like to do it. And so I think there's a little bit of the crypto casino in the meme coin market right now, but I don't necessarily think that that's new people to crypto getting onboarded. But that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, and I think we also have to understand that these are two different kinds of investors. When you look at who's investing in Bitcoin and the Bitcoin ETFs and who is trying to play the meme coin market, two completely different kinds of investors. Their investment
Mm,
thesis is different. Their goals are different. You have short term versus long term. You have more fundamentally driven versus stuff versus like emotionally or social media driven stuff. And the people who are buying in and trading meme coins are probably not people who are dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin and partaking there. Again, two completely different sides. And I think that's why we've seen Bitcoin relatively unaffected by this, is because the people who are investing in Bitcoin are just a different group of people entirely. Their goals are different, their investment thesis is different. And I think that needs to be paid attention to. And it's unfortunate, and you made a good point on this, that the money that is leading into these meme coins and things like Libra are other altcoins. People are selling their Solana for these meme coins. They're selling their other altcoins so that they can get exposure to these assets. I'm sure some people are maybe selling their Bitcoin and doing a transfer and doing a swap, but it's just again, it's two different things. So I think that needs to be understood. We have and at the same time, I think kind of looking at the sell off, we can't blame it all on Solana. It's not fair. What happened was unfortunate. But I do think that there's also been a little bit of frustration around people not getting any kind of instant gratification. And what I mean by that is that if you look at the crypto space, there were a number of people saying, hey, I'm going to make a trade. I'm going to place a bet that we are going to see crypto ETFs get approved. We're going to see more altcoin ETFs immediately under the new administration. We're going to immediately see this idea of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. We're immediately going to see all these SEC lawsuits against crypto companies get dropped. And that's not something that we're seeing immediately. And that's the key word there. And, and David Sachs in one of his recent press conferences was saying, hey, we're exploring the ideas of this stuff in the first 100 days. Well, that means that we probably won't even get any of this coming to reality until later after that. And so that kind of pushback in the timeline, people not saying, oh, why am I not getting this day one or week one? Even why am I not getting this in month one? Well, I think that this is more of a year one approach, right? When we get this talk of sovereign wealth funds investing in Bitcoin, the Bitcoin strategic reserve, more altcoin ETFs, all these different things. I think that these are all still very possible and likely to happen, but instead of being a day one or a week one thing, I think it's a year one thing. Some might happen a little bit sooner, some might happen a little bit later, but there were investors who were betting on the fact that we would get these close to immediately. And I think the fact that we didn't get it, which again is a little bit silly, thinking that someone's going to come into office and with wars going on around the world and inflation and all these crazy things being like the number one thing that we need to do is Bitcoin. And as much as I wish that was the case, right? I have exposure. We got to be a little bit realistic here and be like, hey, there's a lot of stuff that needs to get addressed before we start, throwing around all this Bitcoin legislation. And
Hmm.
yeah, so again, I think all that's coming. All those positive catalysts, they didn't just go away. I think they're still coming our way. I was looking at the likelihoods of a lot of these ETFs getting approved. Solana, Cardano, XRP, and Litecoin are the main four that are next in line, and they're all still really high. I think there was a 90 or 80 to 90% chance for Litecoin, an 80 to 90% chance for Solana. I think Cardano was at like 60 to 70. I think XRP was somewhere pretty high up on that list, around 70 to 80% chance of getting approved this year. And those are all super, super high numbers. So the odds are that we do see more altcoin ETFs. We just might not get it immediately.
I think we have a friend in the chat here, Lou Too Fresh, and he asked, so we kind of answered it, but he was asking, any word on the Sol ETF, but so we
I'll do
kind of
you one
gave him the
better.
answer there, but he also he also said that he sold his soul to play Blinko, and I think that's the perfect summary of people in
Oh,
crypto
no.
right now, like waiting for the big catalyst of the Sol ETF, and while you're waiting, you're hitting the crypto casino. So I thought that comment made me laugh from Lou.
Yeah, that fits into the narrative of what we've been talking about. So, Lou, we appreciate you tuning in to give you, I guess, a deeper answer of what you were asking for of an update on the Sol ETF. We have some big deadlines that are coming up here. You can see on the chart. It's a little bit of a dated chart, but you can still see the deadlines coming up right around March 4th, or excuse me, March 11th is going to be the next big date to watch out for. So this is going to be the second deadline for the Solana ETFs, and that's going to be coming up on March 11th. And then the next one after that is going to be right around 6/9. So we have a couple of big dates coming your way in the not so distant future, just under a month away. But we're going to find out more information then on March 11th.
Yeah, no, important dates to keep intact. So I think the other thing that we've been seeing on the timeline and talking internally has been the FTX payouts have begun. And so for those who might be new, new to listening, just to set the stage, FTX was the old crypto exchange led by Sam Bankman-Fried. Most people would know and recognize that name. So when that fraud happened and they went bankrupt, if you had tokens on that exchange, you couldn't access them. And so through the bankruptcy, there's now a repayment period that is beginning. And so sadly, if you had, one Bitcoin on the exchange when it happened, you're not getting the Bitcoin price that you see today at, 94,000. It would be what the price was. So I have
Mm-hmm.
this is kind of more of a meme than anything, but it kind of paints the picture of what you'd be getting right now. So FTX payments start today, and you get the 2022 prices. So, one Bitcoin at 18K, one Sol at 15K, or I'm sorry, $15. One Sol at $15 is a devastating depreciation, which again kind of highlights what self custody can do for you if that's something that you're interested in, because not your keys, not your coins, classic, classic saying in the space. However, and this is kind of the meme side of it, one ETH will get you $2,500. So, obviously the ETH bulls are waiting, and it's something that I think we've talked about. Is this Solana FUD going to lead maybe people back to ETH, and give ETH a little pump? But just something to know that, I guess. Do you think that the repayment is good in the sense of its liquidity, or is it more going to be some more selling pressure around that. What are your thoughts, Brendan?
You know, for whatever reason, people immediately think, oh, this has to be selling pressure, when that just is not always going to be the case. It's easy for people to look at anything that was a bad situation and just imply that it has to be the worst possible outcome. Well, what is the worst possible outcome? The worst possible outcome is that everyone gets all these funds back and then they mass sell them off onto the market. Well, what is the best possible outcome? No one sells anything, right? They just reinvest it. We have more liquidity and they hold. What's probably a happy medium in between? Well, some people hold, some people sell, some people trade for different altcoins. And I think that's the likely scenario that we get. We have seen so many sell-off events, ones that are equally as big. When you look at a lot of these crypto companies or crypto exchanges that have gone bankrupt, the big one was Mt. Gox. We've seen so much FUD circle around this, and guess what? It minimally affected the market. The FUD affected the market more than the actual token disbursements and the money disbursements. And I kind of see this working out the same way. I think that the fear of this, the uncertainty of this, can affect the market in a more negative way than the actual people getting the money back. So I'm glad people are getting their money back. I think that they deserve it. They were in a awful situation. It's a shame that they're getting back a dollar amount of what it was at the time and not the cryptocurrency that they actually held. I'd be pretty salty if I had a Bitcoin that I bought at 18K and in 2025 I'm getting 18K back instead of the one Bitcoin that I owned. But I guess pickers can't be choosers.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it's 18 is better than 0.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a tough situation. But I think that
Yeah.
again, when you get in the weeds and you're dancing around the FUD, and whether you're waiting for the big catalyst for price movements, hopefully to go upwards, or you're dealing with the Solana casino, don't get lost in the weeds of all the maybe negativity and the FUD when there's so much positive stuff going on. So you brought this up the other day with all the states. Again, this isn't all the states that are going to have some type of Bitcoin legislation, but it's been proposed and it's in the system, and the number's 32. So
Which
32 states with. Sorry, no, go ahead. This was what you brought up, so please tee it up for
well,
us.
this is crazy because we were talking about this on the rundown like a week or two ago. And we were like, man, dude, there's 10 states that want to adopt Bitcoin legislation. And we went through all the different ones and what they were looking at. And we were like, the note that we ended on was, guys, in a year from now, in 4 years from now, this number could be 20, it could be 30. And we're here a week later, like what, 1, 2 weeks later, and we're already at 32 states. When I first saw this, Bryce brought it up to me, and my response was, like, is that real? Like, I had to double check it because I told him, we literally just covered this a week or two ago, and the number was 10, and now here we grow. Or here we go, and we're at 32 different states. I mean, this is growing at such an exponentially accelerated rate. I was not expecting this. Again, I was expecting 32 by the end of this year, by the end of maybe like Trump's presidency or something like that. In the next couple of years, I was expecting this number to be higher. Granted, these aren't 32 approvals, right? It's not like 32 states now officially have adopted Bitcoin. They're doing the buying, they're adding it to pension funds, they're adding it to retirement plans. We're not there yet. This is just saying, hey, 32 states are looking to adopt this in one way or another. But still, it's a huge leap from what we saw even just 2 weeks ago. I mean, go back, watch the interview that we had, or watch the crypto rundown that we had. And again, I forget if it was last week or the week before, but you can go over us actually talking about this stuff. And I think that's one of the benefits, TiVo, of us doing this, is that we are bringing the topics to you before it's mainstream. We're bringing these ideas, these news articles, all of these catalysts that are happening behind the scenes. We are bringing them to you before they're popular. We were talking about these Bitcoin ETFs and states adopting Bitcoin before there was 10. Then we brought it back up when there was 10. Now we're bringing back up when it's 32. In the future, it's probably going to be even higher than this. But we are trying to bring all of this stuff to you, whether it's altcoin related, whether it's Bitcoin related, whether it's fundamentally driven. Our goal is to bring all of this to you for free early so that you can know what's going on before it's popular and before it's popping. So again, I don't want to toot our own horn too much here, but we hope all of you do enjoy this stuff. I know me and TiVo, we love doing this. We love talking about all this stuff. But there's just a lot going on out there. And another big thing that I saw was that Standard Chartered is talking back about what could happen with Bitcoin and Bitcoin's relationship to some of these sovereign wealth funds. Now, the United States basically came out and said, hey, we should have a sovereign wealth fund. And there's a lot of speculation that Bitcoin would be adopted into that and that there would be a little bit more of a Bitcoin interaction there. So they had this analyst that was saying, hey, after Abu Dhabi's recent investment in BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, we could start seeing this happen in a bunch of different sovereign wealth fund ETFs. And for reference here, I mean, Standard Chartered is a massive TradFi institution. I think they have $135 million, or not billion, $135 billion in assets under management. I saw something they're expected to grow up to like 200 billion in the next several years. So they're this huge player, and they're saying, "Hey, we think that this can continue to grow." Again, we saw Abu Dhabi's investment into the BlackRock ETF, and now what we're looking for is for that kind of ripple effect to continue on. We'll probably see that happen in other countries in different parts of Asia and Europe and North America and all over the place. And the final note that they left off here in this article was them saying, hey, Bitcoin is maintaining its path to reach 500K in the next 3 years. And that was the note. And this was coming from Geoffrey Kendrick, who is the global head of digital research or digital asset research at Standard Chartered. And he said Bitcoin is still maintaining its $500,000 trajectory or forecast by the year 2028, which is just 3 years away. So if you're looking at this and Bitcoin's at what, 93, 94, 95,000, well, that would mean that Bitcoin would need to go up 5 times from under 100K to 500K to reach that goal. So I don't know about you, whatever that is, 4, 5, 600% is not a bad return over the next 3 years. When you look about getting a 500% return, a 600% return, anything like that in an asset as large as Bitcoin, that's a pretty good return rate, especially when we're talking about like, hey, these indices over here, NASDAQ and S&P are having record 20% back-to-back years. Well, what if we had like 200% back-to-back years on Bitcoin? What if we had 100% back-to-back years? Like, that's the kind of thing that's possible over here. So it gets me excited. There are so many catalysts that are still happening out there. And I do agree with him. I think a lot of this stuff happens. And as it does, we're just going to continue to see things appreciate. So we're ending things off on a good note here,
Well,
TiVo.
got one more thing. So this is actually something I saw this morning. I didn't realize this was happening today, but I couldn't find an article that wasn't like paywalled. So I'll share the Google search here. But President Trump is attending a conference today, and we were talking about how the Saudi wealth fund is buying Bitcoin. This is a Saudi-backed conference in Miami. There's going to be all different talks, obviously energy, and a couple other things around investing maybe in America and that kind of deal flow that Trump's trying to get for investing in America. But Bitcoin is on the docket. The Saudis will be there. Trump will be there. And a friend of the program, Michael Saylor, will be there. So I think that's an interesting combination of people to be in some rooms discussing business down in Miami today. So saw that on the news this morning, did some research to it, and also found that Michael Saylor is going to be there, and Bitcoin is on the docket. So I thought, and again, ending on a positive note, look through the weeds, find the research, and strategize accordingly.
Yeah, maybe that's the catalyst that we need. I guess time will ultimately tell, but we'll report back next week with with what's happening over there. And yeah, I mean, there's just a lot going on. So, overall, everyone, stay optimistic, stay in touch with what's happening. There are a lot of good things happening, a couple bad things finally. We've been talking about how it feels like it's just been good news after good news after good news. Well, occasionally something bad happens, but we're going to report on that as well. So if you like the content that we make, again, completely for free, all we ask is that you consider hitting that like button, you hit that subscribe button, you follow us along. And if you're listening in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Audible, leave us a review as well. We'd love to hear from you. We love reading through those, and we love being able to interact with everyone. So thank you all for watching. And until next week, we're going to see all of you at the same time, same place.